My stepmother made me eat dinner in the basement for 6 years. She didn't know my grandmother owned the house. I want to start by saying something that's going to sound strange. For 6 years. From the time I was 11 until I was 17, I ate almost every single dinner of my life sitting on an overturned laundry basket in a cold, unfinished basement, off a paper plate. While my father, my stepmother, and my two step-siblings ate at the dining room table upstairs. I could hear them, I could hear the forks, I could hear them laughing at things I wasn't there to laugh at, and my father knew. My father knew every single time, and every single time he let it happen. This isn't a sob story I'm writing for sympathy. I'm writing it because 6 months ago my grandmother found out, and what she did after that is the only reason I'm not still down there. Let me back up. My mom died when I was 9. Aneurysm, no warning, gone in an afternoon. My dad, Greg, was a mess for about 2 years, and I don't blame him for that. Grief does strange things to people. What I do blame him for is what happened after he met Denise. Denise came into our lives when I was 11. She had 2 kids from a previous marriage, Tyler and Madison, a year and 2 years younger than me. On paper, it looked like a nice blended family story, new mom, new siblings, fresh start. For about 4 months, it actually kind of was. Denise was warm in the beginning. She learned my favorite foods. She came to my school things. I remember thinking maybe this wouldn't be so bad. Then she and my dad got married, and something in the house shifted almost overnight. It started small, the way these things always do. I left my shoes by the door, and Denise said I'd have to learn respect for shared spaces. So I ate dinner alone at the kitchen counter that night while everyone else was in the dining room. I thought it was a one-time thing, a lesson. Kids get punished, that's normal. But then it happened again the next week, and the week after that. And within 2 months, it wasn't tied to anything I'd done wrong anymore. It was just where I ate, every night. In the basement, because Denise said the kitchen counter was for family meals, and this needs to be separate so you understand the difference. The basement wasn't finished. Concrete floor, one bare bulb hanging from the ceiling, a card table shoved in the corner next to the water heater. Denise would put my plate down there before she called everyone else to the table upstairs, and I'd go down and eat by myself in the cold, listening to the muffled sound of my family's voices through the floorboards. I asked my dad about it once, maybe 3 months in. I remember exactly where we were, in the garage. He was looking for something in a toolbox, and I asked him why I couldn't eat with everyone else. He didn't even look up. He said, "Denise has her reasons, bud, just give it time. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." That was it. That was the entire conversation. I was 11 years old, and my father told me, essentially, that keeping his new wife calm mattered more than whether I ate a hot meal next to another human being. So I learned not to ask. Over the years, the rule calcified into something that didn't even need explaining anymore. It just was. Tyler and Madison never once ate in the basement, not one single time, for anything they did, and believe me, they did plenty. Madison broke a window with a baseball. Tyler got suspended twice. Neither of them missed a single dinner upstairs. It was never about behavior. Denise made that clear to me directly once, when I was maybe 13 and stupid enough to point out the double standard. She looked at me completely calm and said, "They're my children, you're Greg's, there's a difference, and you'll understand that difference better if you sit with it." Sit with it. In a basement. With a paper plate. I got good at it, honestly. That's the part that's hard to explain to people who didn't live it. You adapt. I brought a book down some nights. I made up little games in my head. I told myself it was fine, that it didn't matter, that food was food no matter where you ate it. I told myself a lot of things to survive 6 years of that. What I didn't know, what none of us knew, not even my dad, not really, was that my grandmother, my mom's mother, still legally owned the house we were living in. That part matters, so let me explain it. When my mom died, the house had actually been purchased 2 years earlier with a large down payment from my grandmother, my mom's mother, Eleanor. It was structured as a loan between my mom and grandma that was never fully paid off. And after my mom passed, my dad had never refinanced or bought grandma out, partly because he couldn't afford to. Partly because grandma, out of love for my mom, never pushed him on it. She just let him and me keep living there. Denise didn't know this. As far as Denise was concerned, it was Greg's house, full stop, and she ran it like a kingdom she had married into. Grandma Alina lived 2 hours away, and after my mom died, she'd made a habit of visiting every few months. Usually with advance notice, because Denise always insisted on getting the house presentable first. Looking back, I think that was intentional. I think Denise needed the warning so she could make sure I wasn't in the basement when Grandma walked in. For 6 years, that system worked. Until it didn't. It was a Tuesday in March, not a holiday, not a birthday, nothing special. Grandma had been in the area for a doctor's appointment and decided on a whim to swing by without calling first, something she almost never did. She let herself in with her spare key around 6:15, right in the middle of dinner. She told me later that the first thing she noticed was that the dining room table only had 4 places set. Greg, Denise, Tyler, Madison, know me, she asked where I was. Denise, according to what I heard afterward, said something breezy like, "Oh, he's just finishing something downstairs, he'll be up in a minute." Grandma said fine, sat down. Made small talk for about 90 seconds, and then said she wanted to say hi to me and went looking. She found the basement door, went down the stairs, and found me sitting on an overturned laundry basket in a room lit by one bulb, eating cold spaghetti off a paper plate balanced on my knees. I still remember her face. I've never seen an adult go that pale that fast. She didn't say anything to me at first. She just stood on the bottom step for what felt like a full minute, looking at me, looking at the room, looking at the water heater and the concrete floor and the card table. Then she asked me very quietly, "How long has this been happening, sweetheart?" And I told her the truth, 6 years, every night, sometimes twice on weekends. I want to be honest, I thought she'd be upset. I did not expect what actually happened next, which was that my 71-year-old grandmother turned around, walked back up those basement stairs, and absolutely leveled my father and stepmother, in a way I had genuinely never seen from her before. She didn't yell, not at first. She stood in the dining room doorway and asked Denise in this flat, terrifyingly calm voice, "Is this a new thing?" Denise tried to spin it, something about boundaries. Something about how blended families need structure, something about how it wasn't punitive, it was just how things worked in this house. Grandma cut her off and asked my dad directly. "Did you know about this?" My dad, to his very limited credit, didn't lie. He said yes. He said he'd known basically the whole time. That's when Grandma said the thing that changed everything, though none of us understood the full weight of it yet. She said, "This is my house, Greg. I own 62% of this house on paper, and I am telling you right now that boy is never eating another meal in that basement again." Denise actually laughed. She said something like, "Alina, I think you're overreacting to a discipline strategy," which, in hindsight, might be the single worst thing she could have said in that moment. Grandma didn't argue with her anymore. She just picked up her purse, told me to grab a jacket, and said I was coming to stay with her for a few days while the adults figure some things out. My dad didn't stop her. I think even he knew in that moment that he had nowhere left to stand. I want to pause here because the next part is the part that surprised even me, the part I didn't see coming, and honestly the part that made the whole thing click into place. While I was staying with Grandma that first week, she started making calls. Not just to a family lawyer about the house situation, to people from Denise's past. It turned out Grandma had never fully trusted Denise, and when something like this happens, grandmothers apparently do not simply move on. She tracked down Denise's first husband, then more importantly, Denise's oldest child from an even earlier relationship, a daughter named Casey, who I hadn't even known existed. Casey was 26 by then, and hadn't spoken to Denise in almost a decade. When Grandma reached her and explained what had happened to me, Casey went quiet on the phone for a long moment, and then she said, "She did the same thing to me." The garage, not the basement, but the same thing. I ate in the garage from when I was 10 until I moved out at 16 and never went back. That's when it stopped being one bad decision by an overwhelmed stepmother, and started looking like exactly what it was, a pattern. A method, something Denise had done before, to another kid in another life, and had simply repeated with new furniture and a new address. Grandma had Casey write everything down, dates as best she could remember, details. The reason Denise had given her at the time, almost word for word what she'd told me. "You'll understand the difference." Grandma's lawyer said it was exactly the kind of corroborating pattern evidence that turns a messy custody dispute into something a lot more serious. From there, it moved fast. Grandma filed for emergency temporary guardianship. Using the pattern evidence and photos she'd taken of the basement setup before we even left the house that first night, she'd had the presence of mind to snap pictures of the card table. The paper plate, the one bulb, before she came upstairs. Those photos ended up mattering more than almost anything else in the whole case. A caseworker got involved within the week. When she interviewed Tyler and Madison separately, both kids, 11 and 12 by then, confirmed, without being coached by anyone, that I always ate downstairs, and that this had always just been the rule. Kids that age generally don't know how to lie convincingly to a trained caseworker about something that mundane to them. It wasn't dramatic to them, it was just normal, which honestly was its own kind of gut punch to hear described that way. The state ended up filing child endangerment and neglect charges against Denise. My dad was charged too for failure to protect, though his charge was less severe since he hadn't personally enforced the rule, just allowed it. Here's where the financial part really landed, and where Grandma's ownership of the house turned out to be the thing that broke the whole situation open. Because Grandma held the majority equity position on the house through that old unpaid loan, she was able to force the issue in a way an outside party never could have. She gave my dad and Denise 30 days to either buy her out in full, which they had no way to do, or vacate. At the same time, her lawyer filed to formally establish that the small trust my mother had set up for me before she died, meant for my college fund, had been drawn down over the previous 4 years by almost $11,000 in withdrawals that Denise had authorized using a joint account she talked my dad into setting up for household efficiency. Denise had been quietly siphoning off pieces of my own mother's money to cover things like Tyler and Madison's private soccer club and a family vacation to Florida I hadn't even gone on. I'd literally eaten dinner alone in a basement funded partly by money that was supposed to be mine. Once that surfaced, it stopped being just a custody case and became a fraud case too. Denise ended up taking a plea deal on the endangerment charge and a separate restitution agreement on the trust money to avoid a felony theft charge. She got 2 years of probation, mandated counseling, and a restitution order to repay the trust in full over 5 years. My dad avoided jail time but pleaded to a lesser neglect charge, got probation and mandated parenting classes. And this is the part that actually surprised me most. He and Denise separated within 2 months of the case becoming public. I don't think their marriage could survive both of them looking at each other and remembering what the other one let happen, or in her case, did. Grandma was granted full legal guardianship of me about 6 weeks after that first Tuesday night. I moved into her house permanently. I have my own room with a bed and actual sunlight, and I eat dinner at an actual table every single night. And some nights I still can't quite believe that's a normal thing that's allowed to just happen to me now. It's been 3 months since the guardianship was finalized, and I wanted to give an update because a lot of people who heard the earlier parts of this story asked what happened next. My dad has been trying, in a slow and honestly kind of awkward way, to rebuild something with me. We have dinner together once a week now, always in a restaurant, never at his old place, which he sold as part of the settlement with Grandma. He's in therapy, which he never was before, and the last time we talked he actually apologized without immediately following it with an excuse, which for him is new. I'm not all the way there with him yet. I don't know if I ever will be. But I'm letting the door stay open a crack, mostly for my own sake. Denise finished her first 90 days of probation without incident, from what I've heard through the lawyers, and has apparently moved with Tyler and Madison to live with her sister 2 states away. I don't have contact with her, and I don't want it. Tyler sent me a message on social media a few weeks ago, just a short one, saying he was sorry about the basement thing, and that he didn't really understand it back then. I believe him. He was a kid too. I told him he could talk to me anytime he wanted. And Casey, Denise's oldest daughter, the one from the garage, actually flew out and met me in person last month. It was strange meeting someone who'd lived through a version of the exact same thing I had. A decade before me, in a different house, with a different piece of furniture standing in for a basement. We talked for almost 4 hours. She's the only person who's ever fully understood, without me having to explain it, why I still sometimes flinch a little at the smell of a cold plate of food. Grandma bought a proper dining table when I moved in, nothing fancy, just solid wood, seat 6. She told me the first night I sat down at it that as long as she's alive, nobody in her house eats a meal alone unless they choose to. I think about that sentence a lot. I still don't fully understand how two adults look at an 11-year-old, then a 12-year-old, then a 13-year-old for 6 straight years, and choose a basement over a chair at their own table. I don't think I need to understand it. I just needed someone to finally walk down those stairs and see it for what it was. Grandma did. And she didn't just see it. She owned the ground it was standing on, and she used every bit of that to make sure it never happened to anyone in that house again.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want more fascinating Reddit tales, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to Archives of Reddit. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.